predicting the 2028 Team USA basketball roster. So obviously the team in 2024 just won gold with a lot of old guys. So we're going to see some new faces undoubtedly on the 2028 roster. So this one, first going to start with my starting five here and then fill out the rest of the roster, 12 players, which I'm assuming they'll stay with 12. And I got some guys that might shock you towards the end of this list as well, but everyone was shocked by the addition of, Derek White on this roster. Probably Halliburton was a shocker to me and a bunch of other people. And so I'm just going to go through who I think is going to make the roster in 2028 in this one, and then talk a little bit about why I think each player is going to and why I left some of these guys off as well. So let's just get right into this one because we got a lot to cover. So first, starting point guard on the 2028 Team USA roster, I am going with Ja Morant. So Ja Morant obviously didn't make the roster. Probably if he didn't have all those issues, he would have made it over someone like Tyrese Halliburton on this team. And what you kind of found out at the end here in the last two games is you kind of just need some dogs on your team like Steph Curry, LeBron, KD, guys that can just get you a bucket whenever. That guy is Ja Morant here. So they need those type of players on this team. And I think he's one of the best in the league. Still definitely young enough in 4 years. Be like at the peak of his game. People forget how good Ja Morant is because he hasn't played in a while. 25 points a game, over 8 assists just last season. Before that, 26 points a game, 27 before, and was probably a top 10 player in the NBA in most people's eyes during those runs where he was playing the Warriors in the playoffs for 2 years in a row. I think he's going to get back to that when the Olympics come around. He's just going to be turning 29. So he just turned 25 on August 10th, 2 days ago. Going to be the starting point guard here on Team USA. Starting shooting guard, I'm sticking with Devin Booker here. Booker was a great role player on Team USA. Going to be one of their older players on this roster that I'm making here, because he is 27 years old now. He was knocking down threes, had a few huge games, definitely bought into being kind of a spot-up shooter and a solid defender on the Team USA. So I think he's going to stick in this lineup and be the starter. If we look at Devin Booker, 27 years old, so he will be 31 when the next Olympics come around. Not going to be too old, should be in his prime still. He still has, probably 5-6 more years of his prime here. Based on his age, I think he's just going to keep getting better and should be a great player to slot in at shooting guard again on this team for the second straight time in the Olympics. So liking Booker as the starting shooting guard. For the starting small forward, going to go with Anthony Edwards. Started a few games, came off the bench for this Olympic team. Was honestly probably one of their top 6-7 players on this team. Everyone just expects him to get better, be one of the top players, if not the top player in the NBA in the next 4 years. So I don't know why you would leave Anthony Edwards off this lineup and out of the starting lineup based on that, unless we get some new guys in the NBA in the next 3 or 4 years that really command that small forward spot, which I am foreshadowing a little bit on one of my picks coming up here, coming off the bench of a guy that could battle for that starting small forward spot. But for power forward, we're going to stick somewhat small here. We're going to go with Jason Tatum. Obviously, Tatum was on the roster this year, did not play that much, which was highly documented. But I think he's going to be on the team for the next Olympics. He's still pretty young as well. If we look at Tatum, he's just 26 and turned 26 in March. So he'll be 30 years old when the next Olympics come around. So definitely be on the roster. I think he can start. He can play defense when he needs to. Obviously, another scorer out there and a shooter to space the floor, but does have good size as we look that he is listed at 6'8" as well. So can play power forward, but now let's move on to center. Size has proved to be very important in these Olympic Games. Obviously, Team USA playing Serbia with Jokic and then France in their final 2 games, so they did need size to guard those guys. I'm going to go with Chet Holmgren here. Holmgren obviously played his first year in the NBA last season, so he's very young still. One of the top defenders in the league right now. Matches up well with Victor Wembanyama, who obviously is going to be there and be on one of the top teams in France yet again. So liking that for the matchup. Similar size and build and athleticism should match up well against Wemby. And then Chet also hopefully will bulk up and be a little stronger to handle some guys like Jokic, if Jokic is still playing in the Olympics by then, but a good defender and can shoot the ball as well. So I don't think will be a liability on offense, and maybe one of the best center options. There's not a ton of American bigs and centers to pick from, honestly, right now in the NBA. You know, if you think about top centers in the NBA, you got Jokic, Wemby, Sabonis, and you could probably even put Gobert out there. I'm probably missing some, but all those guys are obviously not American. So Chet, I think, going to be the best option to start in 4 years with the trajectory that he's on right now. So liking that as a starting five. Ja, Booker, Edwards, Tatum, Chet Holmgren, definitely a solid five. And then looking at a six-man type player, I'm going to go with Zion Williamson here, a guy who is obviously a massive human being, still is young. This summer, Zion turned 24, so when the next Olympics come around, he'll be 28. Obviously, health has been a big issue of him. If he's healthy, I think he should be on a roster like this. A guy who is big, can play power forward, maybe even can play a little center just because of how big he is, listed at 284 pounds, which will be crucial since the U.S. does struggle to find those quality bigs in the Olympics. You know, they did get kind of lucky with having Embiid out there for Team USA, and it's been rumored that he will not play for Team USA, so he's actually left off my roster, which I didn't mention earlier in this. It's rumored he's going to play for Cameroon or even France in the next Olympics, but I just left him off for those reasons. So I like Zion's versatility in this, can play small forward, power forward, or even possibly center, and still should be athletic at just 28 years old. And when healthy, one of the best players in the world. So liking Zion here as a guy who can play multiple positions off the bench. Another guy very similar to him is going to be Paolo Banchero. Can play small forward, power forward, possibly even center, because he does have great height. I want to say he's listed at 6'10". He is listed at 6'10", 250 pounds, and he's just 21 years old, so he'll be 25 when the Olympics comes around, which is pretty crazy for how good he already is. Almost 23 points last season, led his team to the playoffs kind of out of nowhere. So Banchero, I think, could be one of the top players in the league. Honestly, might even be a contender, him and Zion, to start over someone like Tatum on Team USA in 2028. So do like Banchero here as another solid option off the bench. So now we got two wings off the bench. Going to go to the first guard off the bench here, and I'm going to put that as Tyrese Maxey, who I think is going to make it on this team. Showed that he can be a big-time scorer. Again, you need those guys that we've seen in Team USA like Steph Curry to hit some crazy shots down the stretch to win those close games when nothing else is really working. You can go to these guys that are big time and streaky shot makers like Tyrese Maxey, Ja Morant, Anthony Edwards. You definitely need those kind of guys on your roster. So I think Tyrese Maxey could have a big role on the next Olympics. And obviously Maxey, very young as well. He's 23 years old, averaged almost 26 points per game in the NBA last year, and had a really good playoffs. I think he's just going to keep getting better. So liking Maxey here to come off the bench as another scoring point guard. Then a backup shooting guard who also can handle the ball, Cade Cunningham. I think it's crucial to have another ball handler on this team. We did see LeBron be like kind of a wing ball handler a lot on this roster, and I think they do need another one of those. Cade Cunningham could be that, and another guy that you expect to trend upwards, especially if he gets on a better team in the next few years. I think people will be talking about him as one of the top players in the NBA, kind of a slept-on guy right now. But I do like Cade Cunningham for this team. I know he's done a lot of select team stuff with Team USA, so he's been around them. And I think in the next 4 years, we'll make the jump up to the Olympic team. Cunningham, a guy that's just 22 years old, averaged almost 23 points and 7.5 assists, and has good size, can handle the ball as well. So liking Cunningham as another backup on this team. All right, we're going to the next big. This one definitely going to be controversial. We're going to Karl Anthony Towns here. This team needs size. Looking through American center possibilities here, besides Joel Embiid, who basically has said that he's not going to play on Team USA, it's pretty slim pickings. But with Karl Anthony Towns, you do get a guy with some size here. Towns will be 32 at the time, but he's 7 feet, 250 pounds, can shoot the three ball, and with his size down low, can guard some of these guys like Jokic and Embiid if he's on a different team, and Wemby. So I think he could be a solid backup option on this roster as well. And then we're going to go right back, give another backup center option. This one, we're sticking with that position. We're going to go back to Bam Adebayo. He's going to be a little bit older, obviously, than a lot of these guys on the roster, but played really well for them, played some huge minutes in the Olympics. I think a solid role player off the bench, especially if these two guys ahead of him, probably will not be super consistent. So Bam may have to play a lot here, and I do think you're going to need 3 bigs that are traditional bigs like this going into the Olympics. I've seen elsewhere other projections for 2028 rosters just having 2 bigs. I think they got to stick with 3 here because of the strength of the bigs in other countries. So liking to stick with Bam here. He'll be one of the oldest, if not the oldest, on the roster. He just turned 27, so that would make him 31 on this team, but obviously played really well for them in this past Olympics. Can't go away from him. And then for the final pick, we're going to Cooper Flagg here. So Cooper Flagg, if you didn't see the highlights of him playing against Team USA in the scrimmages, he already looked really good. Projected to be the #1 overall pick in the 2025 draft and should take the NBA by storm. Looks like he could be one of the top young players in the league in the next few years here. And the Olympics is 4 years away, so he'll have 3 years probably under his belt in the NBA by the time the next Olympics come around. So he's not even going to be like a super young player anymore in the league. But obviously we don't know how he's going to be in the league. So this is kind of a flyer. So controversial one here, I guess, at the end, you could say. Now let's look at some guys that we left off here. So from this year's roster, Steph Curry, he's going to be 40 by the time the next Olympics come around. I don't know if he's going to be in the NBA, which probably would make it hard for him to be on Team USA. Anthony Davis is 31. Again, a guy who's going to be 35 years old. You don't know if he's going to be in the league anymore. He always has injury issues as well. So at an older age, I don't know if they can take him on the roster if he's that injury prone. And who knows how he's going to be when he's 35 years old. Coming down here, Kevin Durant, he's 35 right now, so he'd be 39 for the next Olympics, but may actually not surprise me if he is playing when he's 39 still. A guy that said that he just wants to play basketball, is the only thing that matters for him in his life, really. I don't think he has a family of his own or anything like that, so I could see him playing in the NBA for a long time. Honestly, he might be on the roster. And then Embiid, another guy we left off, he's 30, going to be 34. We've seen some injury issues. We've also heard a bunch of rumors about him playing for Cameroon in the next Olympics, so I left him off for those reasons. Then we got Tyrese Haliburton. I think pretty overrated, at least for me. We saw a bunch of role players do well on Team USA, like Derek White, Drew Holiday, and Haliburton right now doesn't really have those role player capabilities. And then I think if you're looking for a dynamic scorer and playmaker, you'd rather have guys like Tyrese Maxey, Ja Morant, Devin Booker, Cade Cunningham over a guy like Haliburton, who obviously was on the roster but didn't really play in the Olympics except for some blowout games. Then you got Derek White, one of those guys who was a role player. He'll be 34 by then. Just, I think, maybe a little old to be playing that kind of role player position on the team. Then LeBron would be 43 by then. If he's still playing in the NBA and the Olympics, it'd just be insane. Drew Holiday, guy I think will be too old for a hustle defender player. He'd be 38 by that time. I guess some other guys I left off, Jalen Brunson here, they didn't put him on this year's roster after he was like an insane player in the NBA this year. So if he can't make it this year, I don't know how he's going to make it when he's in his 30s, but it's definitely possible. Jaren Fox, another guy who I know has played with the select team before, but unless he takes a pretty big jump in the NBA, I don't think he's going to be making it. Kyrie Irving, I think he is just too old. Same with Damian Lillard by the time the Olympics come. Same with Kawhi. Jaylen Brown, if they didn't take him after this year, I don't know why they would take him in the next Olympics. Paul George, too old. Jaren Jackson Jr. was an interesting one I almost thought of here instead of Karl Anthony Towns, but Jaren Jackson is a little bit undersized to be guarding some bigger centers. And that's really it. So this is the 12 players here that we got for Team USA 2028. Let me know if I missed anyone that you think will be making the roster and what you think of the picks in the video. Subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in another one.